Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zha. Today we have a very special guest, Diego Sequera, all the way from Caracas, Venezuela. As many of people know, the world is abuzz with U.S. kidnapping of Venezuelan President Maduro, and Trump is chest thumping about getting his hands on the Venezuelan oil. There's a lot of conspiracy theories floating around. So I thought, okay, why not talk to an actual Venezuelan-based journalist who is actually living in the country? So Diego, welcome back to my show.
Thank you, Carl. Always happy to be here, man.
Yeah, I'm always happy to speak to you because, the world outside, we don't really know what's really going on in Venezuela. So like people's information are being manipulated by a lot of disinformation and psyop campaign on social media. I saw people posting AI generated videos of Venezuelans celebrating. I mean, that's just sad. It's like people don't realize they can't afford to upgrade their computer's DRAM because all the DRAM is being consumed by all these AI data centers to generate these fake AI videos to support U.S. propaganda. So I'm glad I have you here. And please tell us, what is life like right now inside Venezuela?
Yes. I mean, yeah, I saw the AI videos also. I mean, it is sad. I mean, it's like really, it's interesting because it's like a low point that it's evinced that it has always been there, but there wasn't the circumstances to show it, in full force like we're seeing right now with this kind of restoring to this kind of resources to try to make some narrative fit. Because there hasn't been any kind of celebration regarding what happened here on January the 3rd. No demo, no one challenging authority, by the way, and trying to push further the regime change idea and tactic that seemed to happen. And this is not the case. You will find, of course, celebrations, especially the early days from Madrid and Miami, Buenos Aires, Bogota, I mean, other cities in which the diaspora, yes, they really celebrated and they justify it, and they got also pretty bad backlash from the media, so the social media sphere here. And I'm not talking now about mobilized militant Chavistas. I'm talking about common Gen Z kids that went through it, living in Caracas, and they're just like recalling, well, I remember this guy talking tough about what to do in Venezuela, and I'm waiting for him right here. I'm waiting for you. And then comes, different cursings to this kind of persons, because I mean, that's one of the, and it's a very Venezuelan way actually to demand to put your money where your mouth is, in like saying, okay, here it is, just come over and fight it. I mean, we're waiting for you. And of course it's not going to happen, even on a hypothetical full regime change situation in which, I mean, this has been turned upside down, and María Corina Machado gets into office or whatever. I mean, any U.S. pet project, and they won't come. They won't come either. I mean, until I don't know when. I mean, it's not true that these people are actually going to come, because I also stress this a lot. I'm not talking about all the Venezuelans that are outside of the country. I'm talking about the ones who are able to actually engage constantly on social media, that have the time to do it, and of course the money to do it, because as a regular normal rank and file Venezuelan that's living in a city like Madrid, it's probably dealing with tough jobs on services or something, which demands a lot of time and hours and struggling and making ends meet and so on. So it won't have that time to to develop all this posts. So I mean, that's despairing that one at first. I mean, there's no celebration inside, and then there are many reasons why they're not celebrating. Precisely one of them, I think, it has to do with many people didn't support this. Maybe they didn't support the government, but they didn't support this kind of quote unquote resolution, this kind of development. They never agreed, and it's in the polls that came over this last month. They didn't agree with U.S. taking charge of solving quote unquote the situation, the Venezuelan situation. It's something that if there is a situation, it must be solved among Venezuelans. And actually, this kind of things, of course, prevent it from happening. I mean, they have to do this kind of stuff also to prevent any sort of internal process that could end up healing a pretty much embattled society and spelling off this artificial dividing lines that sometimes are there and sometimes it could be closer to reality, but sometimes they weren't there. That there wasn't. I mean, there wasn't no big gap between engaging with people who are actually have their politics and on the opposition side, even crazy opposition level. I mean, I still have people who I talk to and who weren't happy, by the way, and actually could be even more scared than the Chavistas in this case of what could happen after this. And then you have also the recent experiences of people who, for any reason, left the country, walked or something, because this also happened at some point. It was quite hyped by the media. Walked, I don't know, reached Peru, for example, and then started to having like the xenophobic experience of being there. And then the word that was offered by previous presidents, ensuring you a salary and so on, it suddenly becomes fake and sour at the same time, and you start walking back to Venezuela, and suddenly you have the possibility to go to the U.S. I mean, and you end up in the U.S., and then you end up, I don't know, chased because you're TDA, and then Tren de Aragua and the whole stunt, and then deported and brought back by the government. This kind of people also have a very different notion and experience of what's actually going on, and these are also people who know now, the belly of the beast, if we quote Jose Marti. So,
yeah,
and there's just a sense of shame also. So overall, what I'm trying to say here up to this point is that there's no upheaval, there's no unrest, there's nothing of that sort. There are other manifestations of the aftermath. Yes, there are, but not those at least.
So it sounds like it's almost a life just goes on inside Venezuela after this event with no. I'm sure there's a lot of discussions, but are you saying people are just going about their normal life right now?
So far, and to an extent, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, the experience of being bombed, I think, of course, it takes a bit more of time to find a more shaped idea, closer to its actual form or something regarding experience, because it was traumatic. I actually wasn't here when that happened. I was traveling, and I was actually I had to cross the border that day from Colombia, so I had a very different experience of what happened. And even as someone who has been born and raised here, I feel like a sense of guilt of not being here. In that sense, in a wider empathical level, of feeling what has happened here. And you even got places that were actually militant against Chavismo. I mean, municipalities that never had a Chavista mayor, that were actually, part of the collateral damage. I don't know how many fatal victims there were there, but there was a lot of property and infrastructure harm, house being destroyed, So we are not used to this, and I'm not trying to, make a pun out of this, because we're used to a lot of other things, but with this experience, regardless of how short it was, also, it takes a little bit more time, and it is in a way.
Just for my audience, because you keep on referring to opposition party, etc. For the people who have been maybe misled by U.S. propaganda, Venezuela is not a dictatorship. It's in fact a democracy that holds elections. There are opposition parties. It's not a one-party state. And, of course, U.S. would dispute those elections, but the election has been observed by many countries around the world. And speaking of which, did you just see that Trump throw Machado under the bus when he publicly said, "Oh, I don't think she will be back to Venezuela because she just doesn't have enough support back there." I mean, Trump himself publicly admitted Machado is just their puppet with no support inside Venezuela whatsoever.
And I don't know if you also saw, well, when she went to the White House today, and I mean, and she basically like went into through the kitchen door or something. I mean, she didn't have any protocol, and she didn't have enough to say when she came out, because part of the stunt it was going to be, she was going to give her Nobel medal to him, and I think she did, but there's no significant reaction after this. So it's even more, it is that low point that we are talking about that actually exposes to the core the nature of that kind of quote unquote leadership and the origins and the ontology even, of this kind of characters. And it is important, yes, for people to understand that not only there's opposition, but María Corina Machado represents the most extremist faction of the opposition, the most pro-US. There's legal opposition as well. And it's true, I'm being emphatic about it. I mean, like going in, almost an autopilot, stressing that part, because I really care for people to understand this. And regarding, and also casting María Corina Machado in a different light, and not the one that has been overblown and hyped by Western media. Even today, Carl, I had an interview in which it was the English version of a Middle Eastern network, a big one, asking me the whole Machado thing wasn't felt like a massive betrayal of the Venezuelan democratic cause in Venezuela or something like that. And we come on. I mean, no, it doesn't. That's only something that's happening outside Venezuela. That's something that the narrative gap, it's massive, and it's different.
Yeah. Did you also see that Trump conference with U.S. oil majors? Trump was talking to the U.S. oil major executives as if he already owns the Venezuelan oil, and he's discussing how to divide up the spoils. And interestingly, all the oil executives is telling him, okay, no. We actually have to invest a lot of money into Venezuela to make to get the enough return on investment that we would like. We would much rather invest that money somewhere else in Guyana or Canada. But the thing is that the whole Trump premise is that, we got to get our hands on the Venezuelan oil, not China. But it's because the U.S. sanctioned that Venezuelan oil, only 10% of Venezuelan oil goes to the United States. And that's what the Chevron executive is trying to tell him. It's like, this is because U.S. sanctions this happens. So sometimes I don't even know if Trump really understands how the oil business works, because it seems like he's running the show pure on instinct. I mean, he's a man that runs on instinct, but maybe not too much knowledge.
Well, it was, if you follow the clips, it was like a constant blooper in how they were actually ruining the substance of the word. He just said several Truth Social posts before that moment. And funny enough, there were different reactions. That also happened with Halliburton. I mean, at some point, they say, well, thank you for this, and we trust your team, and so on. And when we left Venezuela in 2019, and he asked, why did you leave? And he said, because of sanctions. I mean, just in front of him. And also, it is a world by itself, because if you saw Exxon, well, it was a very much different reaction to others, because basically the subtext of what Exxon was saying or complaining about and saying it was uninvestable, because they used that word, was precisely that the framework and the legal system and the law hasn't changed. So they're basically complaining about this hasn't gone full regime change. And I know that, I mean, you have to. I'm more than sure. It's not a gut feeling thing. I mean, Exxon has a big role behind all of this. If you follow the money, and if you follow the sponsorship of what's have been pushing for all of this, starting with Marco Rubio himself, and how much Exxon has poured in his whatever PAC system he has, and funds and whatever. So it's funny because you have those nuances there, but the overall picture is we cannot do what the thing that you're saying we have to do, and how reality trumps Trump, in the sense of this is what happens when some energy realism comes into play, even by companies that are militant in that sense. And not only that, I mean, as far as I know, as far as I've been following the conversations regarding and the agreements and how the framework will be for the companies now, the U.S. companies now, it's not different from the one that Biden already had with Chevron. And this is important. So there's no major development there either. There's no direct control over resources like he's trying to say. And he's doing what he's able to do outside of Venezuela one more time. Regardless of other things, I'll comment that further on, but to the point. But it shows something else. A very smart and close friend of mine was saying, there's no plan. There's no actual plan. I'm not saying they're operating on a vacuum. I'm not saying that. Maybe there's like a Frankenstein, buildup of a lot of inputs from different plants and different interests that play in, sacrificing some chips like María Corina Machado herself, which is a Marco Rubio asset, and doing this. And so there's no coherent plan, or they're gaslighting us into what the actual plan is. I don't know. Time will tell which one is actually the most accurate one, the ones that reach it the closest, because there was today, for example, a piece by CNN saying that Trump was engaging with private military companies and the whole private, PMC system, which also includes guarding infrastructure or even reconstruction, and how interested they were in Venezuela. But I mean, this is also operating from a void, in the sense of there's they are actually in control of the fields and so on, which is not happening either. And it's and I guess it's a way also to accelerate the way to guarantee to this big oil hotshots to actually get into Venezuela once and for all. Or it is only the gasification, the Gaza paradigm of war just coming over, because this was a component that wasn't as visible as the AI, the screening, the surveillance, the target banks, the use of electronic warfare during that early morning of the 3rd. Everything was already there. This was the part that was missing of that Gaza scheme that has been created after genocide and has been tested there and became some sort of war package. Maybe that's it. And this is just, allowing Trump to be the car bumper that's going to just deflect all the attention of deeper trends in larger fights that are going on. So at this moment, precisely because of the amount of obfuscation, thinking about to finish that point, the hardest, the post, the furthest is from control, it seems. For example, the one he self-published himself, with a Wikipedia entry saying Venezuela's acting president.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing they already talk as if Venezuela already capitulated. They already act as if they already own Venezuela and the Venezuelan oil field, when it's far from that. And based my understanding and based my talk with other experts, Trump is a man who he acts out of instinct. I don't think he has a long-term plan. When you say it doesn't look like they have a plan, I don't think they do. But Trump likes those big, the Photoshop moments where he can pronounce victories. This goes, this is how he concluded the 12-day war against Iran, when he did a glancing blow against the Iranian nuclear facility, and then he declared victory. He declared himself peacemaker, and the same with kidnapping of Venezuela Maduro, because it's flashy, it grabs the headline. This allow Trump to gather the spotlight, declare himself the victor. And as you say, it's also distraction from very real problem of Epstein files. Because even a lot of people among his MAGA supporters are demanding the government to release Epstein files. This level of distraction by going on a warpath, distracts the country from domestic problems, which U.S. faces a lot. We have the Epstein file hang over Trump, and then we have the problem of ICE. Basically not only brutalizing the immigrants, but also American citizens right now. They just shot a white woman. So the country, United States, is really divided at this point. And a lot of the people, it must be stressed. Survey after survey, majority of American public do not support Venezuelan intervention. But, Washington elite, it's totally different, because they're not held accountable to what the American public actually want. And
they don't care.
And for Trump, this is all about himself. He's gathering personal glory. He's looking for a legacy. He's looking to build legacy as the great American president. Now, he probably want another head of him carved on Mount Rushmore. So, and this is his attempt to build personal legacy. So I don't think he's worried about U.S. companies spending $186 billion investment over a period of 16 years in Venezuela. That is far beyond what his scope. He will be way out. He will be out of office for a long time before that happens. So I don't think he cares about that. He doesn't care about a so-called U.S. national interest, whatever those might be, and he is doing this for himself. And his
morality.
Yes,
he said it in that interview. That's enough. That's enough. My morality is like the limit of what's going to happen. That's why we're in a kind of this weird mess right now, where it looks like America is just flexing military muscles everywhere, not just in Venezuela, but also against Iran, now against NATO, a NATO country, Denmark, over Greenland, because this is all Trump's personal project. But having said that, I think the whole Venezuelan operation also fed into presidential ambition of Marco Rubio. Because let's face it, this is Latin America. This is whole U.S. project in Latin America is Marco Rubio's baby, and he definitely has presidential aspirations. I think this is part of him. He sees that as a stepping stone. All politics is domestic politics, and I think this is how U.S. is projecting its own domestic problems upon the global world. But what about Venezuela? What about currently? I know the acting president of Venezuela has already publicly rejected, denounced Trump in no uncertain terms. So, do you think is there that this is why the oil majors have been complaining there's no regime change, and so precisely.
Right now, is that your reading as well? Because I know there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around about maybe a secret deal was made, or maybe even Maduro gave himself voluntarily in order to avoid escalation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that we still have to wait for some things to answer themselves to a point. That it's going to be more closer to definitive, and regarding many of those question marks, even everybody has, some details it would be nice to see a further explanation, or some gaps that are, well, it brings up question marks, I suppose. But coming from here, I know this kind of things also, it's usually the case, and we'll have some responses, and it's probably with receipts, and usually they take the time to do the research and usually release it when there's nothing ongoing. That's usually the way. So yeah, it's anticlimactic in the sense of media expectancy, and it, of course, it could allow many sorts of speculation regarding how this actually happened and why. But beyond that point, because I think that, I might agree with some, and maybe with some others I just don't. Up to this point, what we have is precisely that, there's no actual regime change. It was a kidnapping, something unprecedented as the scenario that has been unfolding ever since this started. And also the way that even to that short moment, there wasn't something. I don't know. I wonder myself how much they actually planned the fact that we're going to deal not with the president, but the vice president, nevertheless, and the whole system, which is basically intact. It is under extortion, I might say, blackmail at this moment. Of course, there's a lot of strong arming, as you have seen, and quite ham-fisted, and actually it has created shockwaves that has already had many reactions, unexpected reactions outside of the usual regarding Venezuela. For example, some Western countries like Spain, for example, condemning openly, or Germany's president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, said it was an act of barbarity, it was a barbaric move by a barbaric empire, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But even to that extent, it has brought a lot of shockwaves. And so far, at this point, the way it has all this been organized, it was done according to Venezuelan law, and the Venezuelan system operating at that moment of something that's completely new to its history. So it's new also to its legal framework, but it was also to some extent already contemplated on part of its constitution. And this is the way the Supreme Court, the judicial power decided, ruled according to the interpretation of the Constitution, and set up the legal framework for what comes next, which is precisely the vice president assuming, in this case, acknowledging that the president was basically kidnapped. But this is a person who's actually responsible for stabilizing the country, who's actually responsible for implementing Nicolás Maduro's plans, sanctioned by him, planned by him. And she's also pretty much a person that hasn't given any big significant concession all this time, like to like suggest something weird there, and because I actually ruled it out. This is also a person whose family was, basically fractured during the 70s. Her father was Jorge Rodriguez, who was a left-wing political leader, a very charismatic one. One that actually moved a lot of people. It was important. He was basically tortured to death by the government back then. So she also has that in her family experience. So it's not that easy also. Also people, because don't know her that well, also think, for example, that she's, being a woman, she's not tough enough for this kind of situation. And boy, they can be wrong about that as well. And we're seeing precisely how this is a situation that has been managed step by step in a way that it has been also telling, about keeping up the basic tenets at all levels of what actually means and gives substance to the Bolivarian revolution, and at the same time maneuvering with this kind of cycle with a gun we have actually threatening all of us at the same time. I was thinking before we joined I joined the show about how we are seeing like two different constant OODA loops going on at this moment for different reasons, of course. One maneuvering in a scenario that it was analyzed and based on a plan that was already written and designed and discussed by Nicolás Maduro himself. This is something that has been addressed by his son, who was a member of parliament, and also the vice president. So this was actually thought through before it could happen as one of the possible scenarios in which something could happen, because the threats were serious enough in that sense. So here we are now precisely in this kind of uncharted waters in which every step it's new in that sense, how it has been managed. And it has included a lot of threats again. You don't have to threat the people that are actually working for you and cooperating and being loyal to you, regardless of the flashy moments on the phone calls and so on. This is still political, and this also has a lot of political theater in the sense that you have to manage what there is, and you have to manage the characters you're facing. The psychology has a massive place here if you're actually facing Trump among precisely him. So it's interesting, and it's a very complex process that we're actually engaging right now. And it's still, I think, a struggle for survival. And now it's a national thing. It's not exclusive of one political affiliation.
Speaking of national survival, U.S. is still maintaining a naval blockade on Venezuela, basically chasing down and seizing oil tankers that's coming to Venezuela to picking up the oil. This is economic warfare. They are trying to strangulate the Venezuelan economy, which is very much depend on oil export. Has that have a spillover effect right now on everyday living situation inside Venezuela, the current oil embargo?
Yeah, well, to what I've seen, nothing far beyond of the usual. You have two elements to take into account here. If December, it's like the last time we talked, it's like the holiday moment and happiness and spending and whatnot. January is hangover month here, in a very economic sense as well. It's a slow month. Reposition of goods takes longer. Prices adjust, and we still have the issue about the currency vis-a-vis the dollar, which is, by the way, central to what's going on the big picture regarding precisely the urgency to preserve some sort of quote-unquote value to the petrodollar, the hard way, of course. So only on the level that it hasn't changed, it has intensified a bit regarding the price of the currency vis-a-vis the dollar, and therefore to buy goods and the markets and so on, and also dealing with it, which is usually the case in Venezuela and other sanctioned countries, with parallel markers that also try to play with the actual figure of the dollar that day. That kind of speculative things, devices you can see when it happened in Nicaragua, it happens in Nicaragua, it happened in Argentina. This kind of, outside of the legal framework pricing of the U.S. currency for whatever reason. It's insane to me. So, but in that sense, what I'm trying to explain here is that that's the only problem that has been constant. But there's no, there's no hoarding of goods. There's not a fuel crisis yet, at least. We can talk about. There was, of course, the usual reaction the day it happened, in January the 3rd. A lot of people went and do the lines on the gas stations through the country, but that happened for a day and a half maybe, and then it stopped. And we don't have that kind of shortage going on at this moment. So basically, it is the same situation regarding, the value of currency, and therefore the value of salary and power purchase. But beyond that point, it shows something that I think it's important to take into account, precisely on that economic aspect, especially of being subject to many different shapes and forms of blanket economic terrorism, which is basically, this proves, I mean, when this was bad 5 years ago, with the oil revenues plunging to 99%, it was really bad. And a lot of things were lacking. And now at this point, with precisely within its limitations, diversification of economy, the blow doesn't seem to be that hard than before. So this shows that some things really have improved on that economic front in order to face this kind of scenario in the last 2 to 3 years. And I'm not saying, it's not perfect, or out of the woods or rosy. It is uncomfortable and it's tough, and you have to deal with a huge amount of another economic tool, which is uncertainty.
Yeah. So right now, it looks to me as an outside observer, it looks like U.S. continue to through coercion and intimidation is trying to make Venezuelan government do what it wants, which is to capitulate and to let the U.S. oil major come back and to own all the oil asset, like before the nationalization of Venezuelan oil assets. So this really nothing fundamental has changed. It's just Trump just upped the escalation, by kidnapping the legal president of the country, by imposing economic oil embargo, and by actually bombing the capital. I wonder how sustainable this is for United States. This is actually, people don't realize, U.S. itself also face resource constraint. They to carry out such military operation is quite expensive. And 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. I've been photobombed myself, so don't worry. I know what's going on.
my son wants to go to the beach. I tell him he has to wait a minute. Okay, nanti. Okay, after Papa finish. Okay, he's not taking no for answer. 1 second. Let me send him to my wife, and then.
Yes, just go ahead, man. No worries. I feel you.
My wife promised to take my son to the beach, and he just can't wait. The kids don't understand the concept of future. They want it now.
Yeah,
live in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have a little one that also photobombs me, even being, on some live on some news show, and she just photobombs. So I know what you're going through. But that's cool.
Okay. Okay, so where were we with the situation? We were talking, I think, where did we left off?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was relying on you precisely because I was wondering where did we
Oh, right. So I was talking about the U.S. Resource constraint, right? Because U.S. empire also does not have infinite resources to carry out such a campaign of intimidation via military means in the Caribbean is actually incredibly expensive. All these to keep all these U.S. fleet stocked with fuel. Like they have these logistic ships or oilers that constantly traveling back and forth to keep refueling U.S. ships. They're already working at full capacity because this is not. I don't think U.S. U.S. military. They can sustain this for a while, but it will be incredibly expensive, and it means they will have to put off on their adventurism elsewhere, right? Because now there are rumors saying that U.S. is moving to strike Iran, but I'm like, with what? All their military assets is in the Caribbean right now. It's going to take them month to redeploy, even if that's what they really want to do, if they want to go after Iran. So we're going to have to just wait and see, how long this Trump craziness lasts. One thing for people outside of Venezuela, they worry about obviously is how long Venezuelans can hold out under such an economic siege.
It's a big question mark, and it also depends. But even that is contradictory to an extent, Carl, because, for example, in order to make things flow, it seems you have to discharge several sanctions. You have to lift part of the sanction regime in order to make this viable, it seems. So I mean, that's blowback, man. That's a new weird manifestation of blowback, and we're going to see others as weird as that one as we go forward, if things keep going the way they're going, in that sense, because it's going into one contradiction after the other one in order to make it make sense. It's weird in that sense, and yeah, I don't like to say, I don't enjoy saying that we've gone through this before, all the economic hardship, because it is devastating, and it's also frustrating if you have enough memory to remember were you living before sanctions, regardless of whatever there was going on. But yeah, I mean, it is a concern, but there's also proof now, up to this point, that we're not at the same spot that we were the first time all of this hit home. And I think that's important. Most of the food we actually eat, it's actually being produced here. It's not 100% sovereign, full food sovereignty, but it's far more than it was 5 years ago. Same with other economic activities, and same with even import-export and so on. So, and also there's a lot of restructuring, and now it's even restructuring further now that's taking place in all the legal framework, precisely to adapt what already succeeded in a different legal form. So I think there are more ways and more resources to at least face that part, the extreme part of the scarcity and austerity and so on, and also keeping into account that probably they're going to push harder against finishing every kind of interaction and deals with Venezuela's allies, who actually were the ones that supported Venezuela and proved that the sanction regime wasn't working anymore as they wanted it to work. And that's one of the reasons they attacked also, and they had to, precipitate everything the way they did. But they're telling them to be expelled. And Venezuela has been quite adamant and also explicit the way they're saying that's not going to happen. Some things, I guess the OODA loop process will be wider, and it will involve the ingenuity of others that are the actual real friends of Venezuela, and in which which things will keep going in that direction. And that's at least what Venezuela's word is saying. Venezuela as a country, Venezuela's government is stating publicly, and she has won over more than one gesture to the People's Republic of China, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the Russian Federation, all these days, including visits to the ambassadors, meetings with these ambassadors, greeting them at the sworn-in, the celebration, the moment that she was sworn into office. The first 3 foreigners that were greeted by her personally were precisely Iran, Russia, and China. So that message is also there. I guess that's going to take different shape and forms. And this is something here that people also need to understand regarding U.S.-Venezuela relationships. because back until 2020, 2013 maybe, or somewhere around, U.S. was the biggest buyer still of Venezuelan oil back then. And there was a lot of trade going on still back then. And it actually sanctioned that it was actually that expelled the U.S. company of doing business in Venezuela under Venezuelan law. But it has always been the government position since Chavez, now Maduro, and now Delcy Rodriguez, that we are always willing to engage on trade and do business with the United States, just like we do with any other country that we decide we have to do, under the terms that Venezuela has to offer. So that's not a cognitive dissonance, and it always been put the responsibility on them regarding the state and the shape of U.S.-Venezuelan relationships. And also, this is on a government level. There are a whole different kind of discussions going on, on a more normal grassroots level of many manifestations. Not only the diaspora, economic circle. We're talking about actually discussions go further. They're now part of the discussion on the right, for example. It goes beyond the spinning that we've seen. So it is interesting. And it also shows how quick this kind of blowback happens when you're closer to home, when you're not back in Baghdad. It takes a bit longer there to feel it, to feel the backlash in many ways, or the sudden uncertainties in many ways as well, as to the short-sightedness and the pettiness of this kind of operations.
Yeah, that's good to hear, and I think it's encouraging that also the Venezuelan relationship with its neighboring country has been improving. I'm talking about like Colombia, for example, and so U.S. at least would not be able to block the land route for Venezuela borders with other Latin American countries. Yeah, yes. and so we gonna have to and Trump right now he's doing all this. Also, he's trying to stay out of jail, because he has a midterm election coming in the United States. And what he's trying to do is right now he's trying to shore support from his MAGA base. So there will be enough Republicans get elected that will allow Trump not to be impeached. so this is why he's also up the antiques. We're going to have to see how the U.S. midterm election shake out, whether there will be an impeachment of Trump coming in. And
I don't know if you saw the quote of him basically saying that like another part of his stream of consciousness, like saying, I think it was with the Times, I don't remember which outlet, but basically saying it would be even better to not have elections or something like that. I mean, he's already saying that.
Oh yeah, I mean, like there are already people like Steve Bannon trying to float trial balloons or like of a possible Trump's third term, right? Beyond 2028, which is crazy. I mean, right now, I don't know how the country will survive another 3 years of Trump at the current rate. Yeah. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Yeah, and I think people and for the people watching, they should not be too easily adopt a defeatist attitude. Venezuela has not been defeated yet. Venezuela has not capitulated yet. The fight still goes on, and U.S. is not all powerful, right? I mean, I know people feel helpless. That sometimes they feel U.S. get to do whatever he wants, but U.S. is not all powerful. U.S. do have its own limitations, and then we'll just have the best we can do is keep our spirits up and keep on the resistance to the empire.
Yeah, resistance takes many forms, man, and especially if you are on the weak side, it takes even more different, a wider set of possibilities and tools. And it's funny enough, I'm going to quote of all people the Taliban when they said basically, yeah, you own the watches, but we own time. And this is a very short-term thing right now, you know. And yeah, I mean, this is not capitulation. Yeah, we're not defeated. And like I've said, and if have been paid enough attention to Venezuela the last 6 years, you're going to see the different shape and forms that resistance actually had during those years. And now I think about something just for a moment, especially on a symbolic and narrative needy empire at this moment, precisely to obfuscate from its own decline. They tried to do a Roman show against Nicolás Maduro. They tried to show him Saddam style, humiliated, destroyed, and, you know, looking to the floor. And he basically was just joking, Caraqueño style, and saying good night, good happy new year to the press corps, even able to send us a message saying, you know, he was in Chaco and he said, nosotros venceremos. And he was also able to take a stand at the jury that had many important reactions in court that day. So, I mean, even that opportunity of trying to go further with symbolic shock and awe basically failed. You know, they didn't, even that opportunity was squandered. So yeah, I mean, and also this massive displays of force is also massive displays of desperation. This is also important to understand.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna see if they publicize the trial, because, you know, we all know it's a kangaroo court, and the charges brought against Maduro is bogus. But they already dropped the drug charges, because we know that would never fly, because there's no fentanyl coming out of Venezuela. You know, that was a completely made up charge. And so now the only charge that's standing against Maduro is possession of machine guns and possession of machine guns that pose danger to United States personnel, which is completely ridiculous, because you are trying to prosecute him in a country that has a Second Amendment rights of citizens, the right of citizens to bear arms. You're prosecuting Maduro for having weapons to defend himself. And this is completely ridiculous. I actually look forward to how they're going to argue in court on I hope will be a public televised trial.
Yeah. Well, they actually, you know, there's the indictment had like a second version after the attack, and yeah, they severely toned down the narco thing. There's no mention for fentanyl, and there's and same with El Cartel de los Soles, which is basically what they were accusing him of running a drug cartel, a narco state drug cartel or something. But they're going to try using, it seems, they're using a star witness that has already been, it was already clear, it's already been shown that he has been coerced, and also had to make his own plea deal in order to reduce his own sentence, which is Hugo Carvajal. But this will, like Max's pieces show, by the way, a very good piece by Max Blumenthal at the Grayson, so it basically shows that this on the legal system would imply discovery that's actually going to point at the CIA history of drug trafficking to say, you know, so it's going to be really complicated to do it. Although, and even for more, we can get even more colorful here. We have this guy, the judge, who I forgot his name, that basically is the guy that persuaded 9/11 victims not to go on trial and to settle something because of the risk of what was going to be exposed on a trial, you know. So exactly. So that would put in a very bad place the U.S. federal state. So it's a good question, Martin. So this is a cover-up judge, at least for 9/11, according to what I've seen. And on the other side, by the way, this is also like geopolitics inside the courtroom, because you have Barry Pollock, I think it's his name, who was Assange's lawyer. So that's also like, you know, there's a lot of indirect symbolism and messages going on here. What kind of fight and a sense of even morality and decency operating here. So that's going to be a nightmare. It's a PR nightmare if you see it, unless they go tough on them, hardcore, I don't know, trying to do something that's going to work in their benefit for the cameras, for the performative elements of this. regardless of the legal case itself. So yeah, I mean that's something that I mean I'm also anxious to see how this is going to develop.
Yeah, we are all very anxious to see how you all play out. And thank you again, Diego, for making your time to join us to tell us the facts on the ground inside Venezuela. Is there anything is there anything else you like to cover on this particular issue?
Yeah, I had an idea and I just lost it. But basically, I mean, this is far from over. I think this is something people have to realize. One more time, I think the LaRouche crowd has it right when they say it's entering a new phase. It is. It is a new stage of geopolitical reality throughout the world, and they have to keep that into account. I completely forgot the other thing I was going to say, but anyway, I was actually reminded that I've been joking with the thing, and now for something completely different, quoting Monty Python, the last 2 episodes. So, boy, man, I foresee that we're gonna have something completely different the next time we're gonna talk. This is going fast, man.
Yeah. So for people who want to follow you, Diego, where would they go?
Well, first of all, the go-to place is misionverdad.com. I think we have to write it down in the comments. Truth Mission in English would be like the rough translation, and the Telegram channel there. Then I have my personal Twitter handle, Diego Sequera, and you can find me there as well. And sometimes I'm running something here and there, so I'll basically will post it on social media and on the Telegram channel of Misión Verdad. So those are the go-to places.
Thank you, Diego, again for
making the
time to come speak to us. This is a very important development, and it's still ongoing story, obviously.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
I look forward to have you back on our show.
Sure, man.
To discuss any further development, because this is, like I said, this is still ongoing drama,
yes.
and we have right now the whole world's eyes are now focused on Venezuela and United States. And hopefully next time when we come together for something completely different, you will be a nice surprise.
That would be great. Yeah, I hope for good news.
Yeah,
some crazy development, that's for sure. I mean, that's the only thing I can guarantee. What it is, it's going to be a surprise, and only God knows.
That's fair. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. Until next time. Bye-bye.